Tilted balls. Yeah,
Woo! Nice. I
perfect.
really, really, really want to, and I never will because I don't have the time to do such things, is make a compilation of all of those theme songs. I just think that would be
It'd be super
hilarious.
awesome.
Hilarious, right? So, hey everybody, welcome back. Another episode, Tilted Balls
Yes, yes,
Podcast.
yes.
Um, yeah, I think we have lots of fun today. I'm thinking there'll be fun. I'm not sure.
I think it'll be fun too. I am wondering if it happens to be warm up there. Did something happen to you today?
Do I look redder? Yeah, it's been in the 70s. Well, today might have been in the 50s. You know, to me, the 70s, 50s all
Uh,
feel the same.
yeah.
So it was pretty much amazing. I have a semi-funny story that my kiddo did yesterday and that he totally denies.
Mm.
So,
Yes, this is a Batman McDonald's cup.
nice, nice.
I'd love to
So
hear this.
you want to hear the story? So I'm
Yes.
watching my little buddy, 6 years old. He's outside playing on the swings, fighting with the dogs, like he's on the slide, just being
Mm-hmm.
a roughhousing little boy like he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like standing on the top of the top of the slide, and all of a sudden he's like sitting there and he's like kind of bouncing, and he's like, "It's me! Hi, I'm the problem. It's me!" And then he goes down the slide.
That's awesome.
Cracking up. And then he got up there and he did a few different voices with it, but always the same line.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were out to dinner later, and I was like telling the family about it. He's like, "I didn't do that." I'm like, "You for sure did that." He's like, "Uh-uh."
Oh, he was embarrassed.
I'm like, "You were so cute." It was like the cutest thing, but it was like Pantera does Taylor Swift. And
Yeah,
he
I
was
was
like,
gonna
I think it
say,
was like Metallica. And I was like, yeah, it was like one of those that had that vibe.
if he didn't do it again, I was wondering if he heard it someplace, but I guess not. That wasn't the
You
thing.
know him, kind of like the rest of the family. They're just
Mm-hmm.
musical, right?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
always has been, and he just makes music. Like he's constantly singing, even though he's like, "No, I don't." But like
Oh,
if you
okay.
just watch him, he's always singing.
That's
Right?
awesome.
Which he always has, right? Like that's kind of a
Mm-hmm.
thing around our house. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, yeah. So
that's
he
super
gave us
awesome.
the metal version of
Mhm.
Taylor Swift. And honestly, I think I liked it better, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it was like, I'm like, oh, I like that. So now I
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to, I might take that and put it in and see if AI will give me a rendition of it. Because I've heard
Oh, I bet
that
you
you
it
can
would.
do that.
Mm-hmm. Whose
So
voice would you actually put it under, though?
I think I could
Can you
just,
do you pick the voice or just you put like metal?
so like I've heard people do different things, but I think I'll just try it right off the bat with saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey,
Yeah.
have Pantera singing Anti-Hero or something and see what pops
Okay.
up,
That'd be awesome.
right? And see if it'll give me that or Metallica. And
Mm-hmm.
either way, I think it'll be awesome. I'll fill you in, listeners, but it was
Yeah,
amazing hearing the little guy do that. I liked it.
that sounds super fun.
So heck yeah, it was good. Gal, there were a few things I wanted to talk about today. What'd you have for us? You moved.
Yes, we are 99% moved. So it was finally just like a decision was made. Gina's like, we're moving this weekend. Um,
Nice.
her brother-in-law came and helped us, and her brother came and helped us, and I'm super thankful that we had the help. And Tristan was there, and Michael was there. So yeah, it went fairly smoothly.
I would have come down and helped. I'm glad you didn't ask.
Yep, yep. Well, it's funny. So it's funny that you said that because we were hoping to interview a friend today. Just it
Mhm.
would have been a random one because we usually don't
Totally
have
random.
interviews on recording days. We do interviews
Yes.
different. But he's gone through a lot and he's just finishing up a divorce.
Hmm.
But we both agree that he would have a lot to add and just some of the things that we've been talking about. I thought it would have been super fun. I thought it would have been a great episode, but he's not here.
No,
But
no. And
but Oh, go ahead.
And I'm sure he knows us well enough to know by now that we weren't BSing and just saying that, which I think is why he's not online. Because
Yes.
he knows we would be like, come do this, come do this. But honestly, people, it's so weird to me. He is amazing. Like he's
Mhm.
so sweet.
That's
He's
exactly
so
what I was telling
nice.
Gina.
Right. And he's like a giant. So like we don't see him in person because like we see people digitally. So like
Mhm.
you're seeing Kilted and I right now, like that's we only see this, and that's how we always see him. And then you see him in person, and he's like a giant, like he
Mhm.
towers over us, you know. But
So,
but he's so nice and so sweet. And I was thinking the other day that I think I was thinking about it today. Like he is not a psychopath at all.
mm-mm.
Like sometimes people are really nice and they're like psychopaths, but
Mhm.
like he, I think, is truly nice. Like when we play games with him, he defaults to niceness, which
Mhm.
anybody who's played a game with me, Kilted included, I always default to meanness. Like I never
Mhm.
default to being
Yeah.
nice.
Well, if you're listening and you know who you are, I don't know if we want to give this name just in case, but I was
Yeah.
psychoanalyzing him earlier because I was telling Gina about it, and I was like, we would love to have him because I can say I don't know him very well. We've played together for many years, and good times and bad times for myself,
Mhm.
and meeting him in real life and meeting all the guys in real life that we play with was super awesome. It was like a great experience. And we honestly have nothing but nice things to say about him. Like
Right.
just like now. And I was telling Gina that, but I wonder, I said his self-talk isn't great, which I think we've even talked about on this episode before. And I
Yes.
wonder if isn't he the youngest in his family? I
I don't
think he's
know.
the youngest in his family, and it sounds like he got picked on a lot by the others and by cousins and stuff growing up. I think he was one of the younger, at least males. There may be girls, but just
Right.
hearing some of his stories. And then also being such a gentle giant, probably got picked on for being bigger than everybody and this and that. And the little boys in us as we grow up, if we don't deal with some of those issues, we turn into men and we still have some of those things where maybe it just hasn't been dealt with yet, or just, you know, I love him. He's an awesome guy, and it would have been super cool to have him. But in my mind, I could almost see, because I think he would have been super uncomfortable because we do think so highly of him. We do think he's amazing.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we would
I think it
totally
would
have
have
made
been.
him
I think it
uncomfortable.
would have been uncomfortable for him.
It would have been because it would have been so much, and probably for our listeners, because it would have been like gushy man love the whole time, right? Like we would have been like, "We love you. You're so amazing."
And I really did have that dream, although it might have been 3 nights ago. It was either 2 or 3 nights, and I meant to write it right when I woke up. I had a dream that he met an amazing
I
woman,
had a
and she was
dream,
awesome, and we loved her. And
and
for
you
some
stole
reason,
her.
I was in. No, I didn't. He made that
Oh,
up.
oh, oh.
I would have had to have been in Michigan, although I don't remember the spot. But literally, like we're all sitting in a bar talking, and I was like, "Oh crap, I have some fish tanks in the back. I need to go take care of." So like I went to the back this bar, and there's like a rack of fish tanks, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't fed these guys in so long, and they're all still alive." So I was feeding them, and I was like cleaning the tanks and stuff. So one of those awesome dreams that's totally random.
That's an amazing dream.
It was
So
super.
here I have two questions
Mm-hmm.
regarding our friend. So I'm so glad you brought him up because I was thinking earlier, I'm like, we may be talking about him a lot today, whether we
Mm-hmm.
interview him or not. But you brought up something that I've always wondered about, right? I don't think you're wrong. I think your psychoanalysis is probably right on. Like I said, I don't remember if he was picked on or not, but I can envision that and see that happening. And
Mm-hmm.
if you never had like an outlet in sports or something, or you never bullied somebody, like you
Mm-hmm.
might not have felt that strongness within you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's too nice to bully somebody, I really feel.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm always like, oh man, you're so nice. Um, I often wonder why I didn't turn out that way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I
You
come
have
from
it
a
in you.
huge family. I got picked on all the time. Our
Mhm,
best buddies, Mike and Matt, picked on, well, Matt, not so much. Mike,
mhm.
all the time picked on me,
Yeah.
right? I was picked on in school. I remember getting picked on in school when I was in elementary, not obviously once I became a
Mhm,
monster. But I, I really remember that. But yeah, it never once like slowed me down. Like my ego was so big,
mhm.
my sense of self was so big that that never like was a thing. And so what was different that made me more like, for lack of a better word, psychopathic, where that stuff didn't slow me down at all,
Yeah.
and I was resilient to it.
I think it goes back to, and we don't know where it comes from, but not really caring what people thought. Maybe at that, because you maybe not develop it when you're in elementary school, but as you got older, like it wasn't something that bothered you. You can remember when my hair was
Mhm.
super long,
Yes,
tons of people picked on me, but it
all
didn't
the
really
time.
care. Like it was just like, okay, whatever.
Hmm.
So, and that's something internal, but at that time in my life, my self-talk was so bad, and it didn't have anything to do with that. I think it had more to do with my home life and my family life than just by how I was raised, where my self-talk was so bad. But like what other people were saying, and never was like, okay, whatever. Like my hair's cool.
You know what I'm thinking?
Hmm.
Here's what I'm thinking, and I don't know if this is true. So I'd have to ask my mom, right? But
Mhm.
I wonder if the family bond was so strong that what I learned was that picking on you or bullying you wasn't a negative. It was like
Yeah.
positive reinforcement, right? Like that's how they showed their love. And so the more I
Hmm.
got picked on, the more I figured I was being loved. And so it
Hmm.
wasn't something that made me feel bad about myself. People picking on me made me feel more important because look, you noticed me. And as
Yeah.
one of nine, it doesn't
Hmm.
matter how you're noticed. You just want to get noticed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that could very well be.
So maybe it was that. And so then when I'm around normal people, they're picking on me just made me feel more included
Hmm.
rather than less included.
Yeah.
And even to this day, like it still happens. Like a really good friend walked into a room I was working in, and there was like 4 or 5 people kind of standing around, which is rare, right? But
Hmm.
we were all milling around. And the lady like walked in. She's like, "Oh, look, all of my favorite people are here and buyers." And everybody like giggled and laughed, and I laughed, right? Because like we're pretty close, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So I was like, but it's funny because like that's just the norm,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's because we're millennials. I don't know. Or not millennials,
No, I was
X.
like, we're not millennials.
We're not
So
millennials.
yeah,
Okay.
that could very well be a thing, because that is where a lot of people have camaraderie in the picking and out of love
Mm-hmm.
on each other, because we even pick, on people, and when we're playing and we're playing
Oh yes.
games, we'll just mess with each other. But yeah, it could be. I don't know. I don't know how one person can move past it so well, or not let them affect them. And I could be totally wrong. He might say, "You guys were way off. It's this, blah blah blah."
Yeah. Like maybe he has like a definite thing, which is why you should be on the episode talking to us
Exactly.
so that we know. So,
Hmm.
you done screwed up, hey, Ron. Like
Exactly. All we can do is speculate.
we can only speculate. Okay, so
But
this leads. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, before we move, like another aspect of what we could have talked about, because he does do a little bit of self-medicating with legal out of the
Yes.
box products. So
Yeah.
I thought that would have been awesome too, because that's something we've talked about a little bit, but
Yeah.
not anything that we have done.
He
So
has
I
so much to share. So much to share.
mhm, so
And
much.
here's what I have found. Like I'll be talking to somebody once, I'd be like, we'd really like to interview on the podcast. And they'd be like, why would you want to interview me? And I'm like, you're amazing. You're interesting. Like everything you say, I'm like in awe of. I'd love to have you chat with us. And people are
Mhm.
always like, Yeah, whatever. No, like they have so low self-worth. And
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, no, like you're an amazing person. Let's hear
Hmm.
that. Let's hear
Yeah.
your story. Let's if nothing else, let's just get your story on video
Hmm.
for other
Yeah.
humans eventually to hear. Because right now, only a small segment of humans has your story. Like let's branch out and share
Hmm.
that story.
Yeah.
But people don't think it's like that big of a thing, or they're embarrassed by it or whatever. But
Hmm.
we
Yeah.
clearly don't have that issue.
So what we're gonna say this leads us into?
So this is what I was thinking about today. Because again, people are buddy, he split with his wife, the divorce is getting like finalized. And it made me wonder, like it's I shouldn't say wonder, but I think marriage is weird. Like people don't hold marriage in as high of a standard as society once did. And I'm
Hmm.
not talking once did like, oh, like 20 or 30 years ago. No, people were getting divorced 20 or 30 years ago. I'm
Hmm.
talking like hundreds of years ago, right? Like you got married and you were married, and that's just the way it was, right? And you know, and you did it because you needed somebody to do one set of the work and somebody to do the other set of the work. It was a
Hmm.
business arrangement. And if love kind of came along, like, yay, whoop-de-doo,
Hmm.
you know, but I mean, really, you just kind of made a camaraderie out of it because you were always together. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer if you're always around somebody and you kind of have somewhat set goals together, like the running of a household,
Hmm.
that you're gonna kind of bond over that pretty closely.
Yeah.
But it seems like, even in our parents' generation and now, that relationship is almost a throwaway relationship.
Hmm. I I I would say if I had to give my TED talk on this, it would be more that for one, there's more job opportunities, more people working, so it's not like you necessarily need that other
Yes.
person. But also, I think more and more people are looking for, searching for that happiness in life and being a life partner with somebody who you may not have deeper bonds with. And you can see because the whole world is much smaller than it used to be, so we can see people who are like, wow, that person seems amazingly happy. You may know them at a deeper level where they're truly happy and they have this thing. So I think a lot of people are really looking for that because you can have it's funny because I didn't think that I thought I told my story of what happened for the last time. I was done. Like there's no reason to tell it anymore.
Sure.
But I was giving a friend a ride
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking and it just he just asked the right questions to where I was like like as I was telling, I was like, oh, I guess I'm telling the story. So I guess it was, it was I'd forgotten some of the details over the years, which didn't really matter. But as I was telling it, I realized to myself, like, oh, I guess this is going to be the last time. But to think about what seemed from the outside was very happy, very successful
Mm-hmm.
people, and then for that to be torn and you don't know why. Like I'm a believer that I'm meant to be here. I'm meant to be with Gina and meant to be with the kids. And that's why things happened with her, like why she freaked out and why she moved away and all that stuff. So, and I wish her the best and I hope her the most happiness. But I think that's just it. I think people are looking for more, and if they don't have it or they think they can get it someplace else, they're willing to do that because people's faith, which can go back to the church being a lot more powerful 100
Mm-hmm.
years ago than it is now in people's lives, to where people have more options. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, like in your case, I think it's interesting, and it goes with our buddy too. Like in yours, your personality is totally committed, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
that's who you are. So you are committed to that marriage from day one. Like you were all in, and
Mhm.
that was the way it is. And that's your personality, right? Like you had dreams about fish because you went freaking all in on fish, right? And
Mhm.
that's not gonna last, right? Like maybe you'll always have a thing for fish. I don't know, right? It may be unholy, but
Mhm.
you you go into a thing where you're all in and then you kind of back off. And I think with your marriage, you kind of did that where you were like, I'm all in, right? And
Mhm.
you're like, bam, I'm doing the thing. Society says I need to get married. I'm getting married, and you did the
Mhm.
thing, right? And then you would have stayed in that no matter what. I really firmly
Yeah.
believe that. She
Mhm.
could have been cheating on you. She could have been a bigger B than she was, and you would have stayed, right?
Mhm.
But she didn't.
Yeah.
Right? Which I am totally
I like to think I
100%
wouldn't have
okay with.
accepted that, but there were things that I was accepting that, looking back, probably should not have,
Yeah,
or tried to get help. But then again, I wouldn't be where I am right now.
exactly. I think people just convince themselves, right? And
Mhm.
like for me, I like this version better, right?
Mhm.
So like I'm not sad about that other one ending. And I like her too, right? Like
Mhm.
I still follow her on Facebook. My girls reach out to her sometimes. So there's like no animosity there.
Yeah.
I would probably rather her be a part anyway. But I
Mhm.
think it was like her doing exactly what you said, right? Like she was grieving, she needed change, and you were the change that she took. And thank
Mhm.
goodness, because I think life turned out better so far because of that.
Yeah.
Um, Personally, I'm hoping the same thing happens with our buddy, right?
Mhm.
I think it was too much stress, kind of like his words on
Yeah.
her. And so she was
Mhm.
like, yeah, I'm out of this.
Mhm.
And, I think he's going to be happier for that.
Yeah.
But it's still weird. And my thing that I started wondering about is the reason people get married. And this is like really, really my feels
Mhm.
right now. Like I'm processing through it. Do you think the reason people get married, the reason he got married, like that's why I started thinking about like, why did he do this in the first place? Because society says that's what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
So you see all of those examples and you're like, okay, so I graduated college, I got a job, I should be getting married right now.
Mhm.
Like that's the way the flow works. And I'm just going to do
Yeah.
the flow, right? Don't you get
Yeah.
that feel?
Yeah. And if you look at, like, growing up, I was a big, I still am a fan, but I was a big Gene Simmons fan,
Yes.
bassist slash lead singer for Kiss. And he was always totally anti-marriage. And it was funny, especially being a teenager, seeing that and like, oh, he just wants to sleep with all these women, which he did when he was younger, but then he was in this same relationship forever, has all these
Mm-hmm.
kids and everything, but was always anti, like, that thing. And I agree. We're taught like, oh, you do this, you do this, you get married, and then like my buddy Willie, they've been together forever, and they're very anti-marriage for financial reasons. Like if
Yes.
they get married, they go into a different tax bracket, and they're getting taxed a whole bunch more, and this and that, and why have the government in our business? And honestly, like I look at stuff like that and I'm like, I can agree with that. Like really, when people get married, think about it. I mean, yes, you're in front of your God, you're in front of all your friends, your family, but you're also dealing with your government. Like your government says this is official. So you can do
Yes.
this on your tax returns, you can do this for your healthcare, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
So and I don't know if that's something with age or the times that we're in or whatever, like for myself. But yeah, I think people just, that's the thing you're supposed to do. Your parents did it, and you
Yeah.
try to stay together as long as you can. And if not, oh well, it's not a big deal. You
Right?
just get a divorce.
Like all of a sudden, right? Like all of a sudden, all of those promises you made, yours
Yeah.
weren't as big, right? Yours were like on a beach, right? But if you're like in my
Hmm.
shoes, you're making like tons of promises, tons of vows. And then you're like, at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, peace. I'm good.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. Maybe you go to therapy, maybe you don't. But either way, you're just like,
Hmm.
eh, you know,
Yeah.
And like for me, and you've known this about me, we've been together our whole lives, right? Like I have to have a person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I grew up
Mm-hmm.
always surrounded by people. Again, I was in a big family.
Yeah.
So I kind of need that thing, right? And Kilton can tell you there was like I can't really remember a time I was single. I don't know if you right? Like that was the
I can
thing.
easily remember like 5, 10 minutes that you were very frantic.
I don't think there was ever I don't think there was ever even 5 or 10 minutes I was single because normally I was dating two people at once.
I know, but you did run downstairs. You ran into the room and you said, "Oh, they found out."
Yeah, but nobody
Maybe
broke
that
up with
started.
me.
Oh,
Nobody
that's
broke up with
true.
me. They were like, you
Maybe,
need to make a decision.
maybe in their minds they broke up with you, but maybe
No,
you could be
no,
right. You could be
no,
right.
because they were like, hey, you need to make a decision here. And I'm like, what do you mean? You got to choose somebody. And I was like, oh, apparently you have to choose. I guess that's the thing, right?
Yeah,
Which
boy,
is
those were
why,
different times.
which is why I need like aim in my life because she tells
Hmm.
me, I tell people that all the time. They're like, no, 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 you know what's right and wrong. And I'm like, I know right from wrong, but not really well.
Yeah,
Like
you
it's
live
the
in that gray.
nuance. Like
Hmm.
it's the nuances that I don't understand. And I have to have somebody who's like, yeah, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that.
Hmm.
Right. Because
Yeah.
like otherwise I don't comprehend that. Right.
Hmm.
And by the way, I see that in my kids. Like one of my kids has no concept of that. Right. Like
Hmm.
they'll do stuff or say something. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're not supposed to say that. And they're like,
Yeah.
why not? And I'm like, here's the reasoning, here's the rationale, here's the logic. And they're like,
Hmm.
oh, that makes sense. You probably shouldn't do
Hmm.
it. I'm like, no, you probably shouldn't.
Hmm.
So, my thoughts have always been, I'm very empathetic. So as long as I'm not hurting somebody,
Hmm.
like their feelings, I'm like, it's probably okay.
Hmm.
Right. I don't
You
know.
learn.
So,
You live and
but
learn.
you learn. You live and you learn, you get a lot of
Hmm.
experience. But even to this day, like, my wife will be like, ooh, I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna go do this, this, or this. And she's like, yeah, no, that's not a socially acceptable thing.
Yeah.
So, but I think I've worn off on her because what I found out Sunday was at church. She was trying to get my oldest daughter, who is not young people, she's like 21, to scream out amen in church. And we're
Hmm.
not at that kind of a church.
She, want her to start speaking in tongues and shaking around.
No. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's hard enough keeping these kids under control. Even the 21-year-old is hard enough keeping under control. And you want her to start screaming in church? Like, let's not open that can of worms.
That
Like,
would
what are
have
you
been so
doing?
awesome.
Oh
That
my
was
gosh.
hilarious.
But so I think for me, I was always going to get married, not
Hmm.
because society told me to, but because I had to have a person. And I
Yeah.
had to have them locked
Yeah.
into
If you
me.
lock them in, then
Like
it's harder to get away.
it wasn't about me
Hmm.
like being committed. I needed them committed to me. So
Good thinking.
right? Like that's kind of the way it is sometimes.
Hmm.
So, that's kind of how it works, right? I needed that complementary figure to me.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but yeah, but that's different. Like most people, I
Hmm.
think, are just doing it because they're like, yeah, this is a thing. This is a thing. And I think part of why this resonates with me is right now, like I just said like 5 times, I have a daughter who's 21.
Hmm.
And seriously, I don't see any interest in her to have a lasting union with anybody.
Yeah.
Like I could be totally wrong. Like she might be listening to this, hey hun, and saying, you're such a dumbass. No, I really want a lasting union with someone,
Hmm.
but I don't see it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think she would be happy chatting or not chatting and
Hmm.
doing her
Well, you
own
never
thing.
know. You
Right.
fall in love a couple times. Things like that change,
Yeah. And so maybe she
or
will.
not, or not. Hmm.
And I don't know if she ever has.
Yeah.
She's just like, whatever.
Hmm.
So that's why
Yeah.
I'm like, but part of that is, we're pretty big on teaching our kiddos to think for themselves and not follow what
Yeah.
society says. You
Hmm.
do you, use the framework you know, and we tell them like what our framework is. We tell them what religion's framework is. We tell them what society's framework is. But we're like, you got to kind of make your own framework.
Yeah.
Eventually, everybody does,
Mhm.
except for those hardline Christians. They just pick up the Bible and say, "Yeah, it's law, so I don't have to think," and that gets them in all sorts of trouble.
Mhm.
So,
Yep. So real quick, because I did forget to say something earlier, but this circles around perfectly.
nice.
The reason I was thinking of our friend earlier, not only because of the interview, but
Yeah.
because when he said today is the day, I wondered, oh, did he find a place yet? Am
Good
I
question.
driving to Michigan this weekend to help somebody move? That,
Full
like,
circle.
those that's the natural like occurrence in my brain. Like, okay, like I haven't heard anything yet. Tomorrow, maybe we'll all be talking. I'll be like, oh man, I got to get my stuff moved,
Yeah,
you know, and everyone's gonna be like, oh, I'm busy, blah blah blah, I'm busy, and then I'll be
because he
like,
gave
oh,
up the
well.
house, right?
Yeah, yeah, he's been looking for another place to go.
So,
So,
yeah. Well, I
and
wonder if
maybe
he's
they
gonna.
have some agreement where he can stay there for a while. You
Yeah,
know, he hasn't gone into that
it
much.
seems like it has not been like he hasn't told us. It's been very animus. There's not a lot of animosity.
No, no, it seems like they work things out pretty well, which I imagine makes things easier for myself. It was the same way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and he has kiddos to deal with and stuff,
Hmm.
so I imagine it's super tricky. I That's one thing that I never understand, right? We have lots of friends of ours or people that we know who've gotten divorced with kiddos, and I never understand that just on the pure workload status. Like, I think I would stay in a relationship for 18 years that I wasn't, that was a horrible relationship, right? Just to not have to deal with that, right?
Hmm.
Like, we're going to still tag team this until they're 18, and then we can go ahead and split. But
Yeah.
till they're 18, we're going to keep doing that, which again goes back to like it's a business arrangement. Like, honestly, that's one of the things I think is weird. Like you said, they're always chasing that happiness, chasing that happiness.
Hmm.
And I think people do that with employment too. And I think that is so wrong. I think
Hmm.
that's wrong. I don't think you chase
Hmm.
happiness. I think happiness is there or it's not there and it's your state of mind. And when you
Hmm.
chase happiness, that's when you get into trouble.
Hmm.
Like, if you're not happy in your relationship, maybe do something to be happy in your
Yeah.
relationship.
And we won't get into it because we are short on time, but one of the new people that I'm listening to that I'm really enjoying, and he says a lot of things that other people do, but one of his big things is like if you're staring at a reflection in the pond and you're waiting for it to smile first, then you're gonna be waiting for a long time. Like
That is like the
like
best line ever. That's going in the book. Oh my
no,
gosh.
life is a reflection. Like life is a reflection. Your outer is your inner, and
Yes.
I'm sure we'll talk about him some more. But that
Oh my
was one I
gosh.
was just like, oh yeah, like exactly. If you're
Like,
not
I
happy, how are you going to find happiness in your job, in your
all the
marriage?
time, like when I'm doing stuff, if I'm starting to get down or grumpy, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I put on the smile, I start saying hi, I start being extra jovial, which like people close to me knows, ooh, it's must be a rough day. I'm like, I'm happy. I'm
They start getting
happy.
concerned.
That's when everybody should be worried. All right, listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully, you
Mhm.
found this interesting. We're running out of time, so we love you. And this is Ballbuster signing off.
Guilty Dragon Jared, love you all.